Hello everyone. So we are continuing with the discussions from this text readings on Kerala, and today I'm going to discuss or probably going to share a very interesting chapter. It is actually a short story, a very short story by a writer who might be very familiar to you, Vaikkom Muhammad Basheer. Yes, Vaikkom Muhammad Basheer, or whom we know as Bepur Sultan, is actually one of the most prominent writers from Malayalam, and he's known all over the world for his humorous style of writing and also his philosophical depth which is there in his writing, and also the kind of language that he uses, which is very deeply cultural and deeply reflective, and it's a very what to say he's one of the most exemplary writers who have written, I would rather say, and he's also one of my favorite writers, and I'm very sure that at least one or two works of his must have been read by you at some point, or even you might have studied it in school in the form of a translation or in Malayalam itself. Now, he has produced many works, and he is very known for his simplicity of writing or the kind of humor that he employs in his writing. And while he uses this kind of subtle humor, almost all his stories actually do have a lot of philosophical underpinnings, and he's somebody who tries to reflect on the human condition, on human life through his writing. Many of his works, even though might seem very funny on a superficial level, we actually get to see, on a deeper reading, we get to understand a lot of ideas about life in that process. So, this short story is also not very different. It is titled Christian Heritage. It's a very short story by Vaikkom Muhammad Basheer, and if you look at the text, you will find names of multiple works by Muhammad Basheer, which you can probably have a look at, and also many other details about Basheer sir has been given there, and he's also one of the modern trio of novelists and short story writers. The others are Tagari Shivashankarapillai and Mankunam Marki. Probably you already know all that. And there is a comment by MP Paul, critic MP Paul, which has been written in the textbook, which is about his work Balyakala Sakhi, you may have heard. And it's that it is a page torn from life with blood still fresh on the torn pages. So the story is actually so deep and so realistic that it is actually a page torn from real life, and there is blood on the edges of it. That's a comment made by MP Paul, which is very. Bashir himself, describes him as a humble historian, and there are many works like Shabdangal, Anuragathinte Dinangal, Anavadi Pengurishan, and Endu Popake Rani Ndairunnu, Pathumayade Aadu, many other names which you probably already are very familiar with. He's also been a fellow of Sahitya Academy, and he's been awarded Padma Shri in 1982. Now, coming to this particular story, it's not that different from his, regular style of writing. It's a very subtly written work, and it contains a lot of humor. Now, I have always felt that it is actually his experiences with the freedom movement and experiences of travel that actually gave him so much insights about life. He has traveled so much, he has met so many people, and he has been through so many difficulties in life. That is what probably adds a lot of depth to his works. And even though there is a layer of humor on top of his works, there is, uh, you know, always I find some kind of deeper inner meaning which lies within those texts. The story is also not very different. Now, this is a very short story, so I thought probably we'll read the whole thing here itself. So, without much ado, I'll get into the story. When I looked out at the road one day, there was a head bobbing up near the gate. Look at the way he writes. It's a translation made by the editors of the text. It's not a readily available translation as such. It has been translated by the editors of the text. So a head bobbing up near the gate. Not he is not written that somebody was standing near the gate, but rather there was a head bobbing up near the gate. Who's that? I asked dubiously. Just here to see you, he said. So the head said, not he said, the head said. Come in. So he invites this bobbling head to come in. The head came inside, rolling on a dark and stout body. So again, not a person came inside, but the head came inside, rolling on a dark and stout body. A very funny way of narrating that experience. He was as brown skinned as black rosewood, sinewy body, very muscular body. Hard work had calloused his palms. Hard work had roughened his palms. His half-sleeve shirt was made of stone-washed JK cloth, a description of the person who has just come in. He wore a dhoti and had on his shoulders a towel. He had. It's actually, you see many people in Kerala doing this. They throw a towel on their shoulders most of the time. Then please be seated, I said. Basheer said, pointing to a chair. He might not. There are other descriptions like he was bare feet. He did not have any footwear, and he might not have shaved in a month. So he had a very thick beard. So the visitor did not sit when Basheer asked him to. He stood there looking very confused. He sat reluctantly eventually when Basheer insisted. Basheer was thinking, who was this man? A fan of mine, maybe, a fan. Or somebody who came for some money. Who has some? Is there someone who has come to ask for some money? What are you here for? I asked. I have read you a lot. I have read your works a lot. Thought I should meet you in person at least once. So I have read your works a lot. So I wanted to meet you at least once in person. So now who he is actually described here. He was a Christian from Changanasheri, Kochudommi, that is his name. Was settled in Malabar for 8 or 9 years. He's been settled in Malabar for 8 or 9 years. An industrious laborer, he had planted coffee and black pepper plants, and his wife was no more. 9 children, 4 sons and 5 daughters. Daughters were married off, sons had settled with their own families. So that's about his background. And he was hospitalized for the last month. When he got discharged from the hospital, he came straight over to see me. So he's been in the hospital for 1 month, and right out of the hospital, he has come to see his favorite author. I felt so proud. Basheer was so proud. Firstly, a fan of his, who's a fan of his writing, and there is another reason. A Christian man had come to meet a Muslim man. I called out to Fabi for tea. So it's not just about a fan coming to meet him, but rather it shows the kind of secular nature of India or Kerala, that a Christian man so deeply appreciates the works of a Muslim man, and he's so appreciative that he has come in person to meet him and talk to him. So it's a very positive secular idea which is there. I felt so proud. Basheer was so proud of not just himself, but rather the secular culture of Kerala. So he asks his wife Fabi to get some tea for them. Changanasheri and Talevalaparambu, where Basheer lives, are not that distant from each other. They are actually quite close by. A Christian and a Muslim are not farther from each other also. So these places are not that far, and also the ideological differences between a Christian and a Muslim is also not that far. So at the end of the day, all are human beings, and they have very deep emotional connections. We spoke for a really long time, exchanged stories from Changanasheri, Talevalaparambu and Vaikkom. We laughed for a really long time. Tea arrived in between, we drank it, talks resumed. We talked about the market value of rubber. He's a farmer, right? The market value of rubber, black pepper, coffee, and time just passed. It became dark. It was getting dark. He seemed to have no plans of leaving. He was so engrossed in the conversation that he did not have any plans of leaving. Lights turned on. When it was evening, lights were turned on in the sit-out. Talks continued even after supper. So probably he had food with Basheer's family. It's late into the night. It's already very late. It's very dark. Why don't you stay in? Why don't you stay here today? Kochudommi was a big yes. He was so happy to say yes to that invitation. Fabi spread out a mat in the reading room. Christian heritage in India by Sri John Ochandritha served as a pillow, and there was a mat which was kept in the reading room, and the pillow was a very thick book which is titled Christian Heritage by Sri John Ochandritha. That was given to him as a pillow. I could hear him snoring shortly after. He had a very deep sleep. The next day, Tommy left after breakfast. When I gave him 10 rupees as a wayfare, he did not refuse. So Basheer gave him 10 rupees because Basheer had this kind of an assumption that he's a farmer, so probably he is not that economically well off. And also, we have a tendency to judge people from the kind of clothing that they have, right? That's even if that is actually not a right way of doing this. Somehow, many of us make that mistake of judging the book by its cover. So Bashir gave him a 10 rupee note and he accepted, and so that was wonderful, Bashir thought. That was a really good experience for Bashir. And days passed by. A relative of my son-in-law came home after 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, another guest came who was a relative of Bashir's son-in-law. Christian Heritage, the thick book, Christian Heritage, was to serve as a pillow again. It was to be given to him as a pillow. When Fabi opened the book, in order to give that book to that person, when his wife, Bashir's wife, opened that book, something fell from it. Actually, something fell out of that book. Two fresh 100 rupee notes. That is actually two brand new 100 rupee notes. Now, we might feel that 100 rupee notes, 200 rupee notes or 200 rupees is actually a very small amount, but if you look at the value that it bore at that point of time, it is actually very high. If you look at the text in the glossary, you will see that 10 grams of gold actually cost 100 rupees in the 1960s. 10 grams of gold, which presently might cost around 80 to 90,000 rupees or more. I'm not very aware of the value of gold nowadays. So that much amount was there. So he was very surprised. Right. So a very interesting story, right? So it shows the secular nature of Kerala, and also shows the kind of power of literature which connects from human to human. Actually, it breaks the barriers of religion, of ethnicity, of geographical boundaries, and connects people. Literature has that kind of a power. That is probably how these two, Bashir and Gochudumi, were connected. A very interesting story actually shows how close we are as human beings, and how all these divides that we have in our minds, all these prejudices and pre-assumptions that we have in our minds, can be erased off very easily. Just like Talayorakparambu and Changanasheri are not far, just like a Muslim and a Christian are not far. The distance between two human beings is not that much. It is just that of a sincere conversation. Okay, so with that, I'll wind up. I hope you will read and enjoy the story, and I also encourage you to read more of Bashir's works, because the kind of philosophical insights that it might give you after all the fun and jokes and all, the kind of depth about life that it might communicate to you is actually going to be very useful for you in your life. I personally have been very deeply influenced by many works of Vaikkom Muhammed Basheer. So I encourage you to read further properly some other works which have been mentioned in the text. These are very easily available also for us. So with that, I'll conclude. I'll see you during the next lecture. Thank you.